It is Friday, and Friday is happy hour, and that means we are happy to talk about tile. If you don't know anything about what's going on right now, my name is Craig, and I am a tile contractor. I've been that way for 20 plus years. I'm a little bit country, but I'm always joined by my good friend John Tedesco, who's a lot rock and roll, and we love to talk about tile. And it's been 2 weeks, John, since we've been here. We had a little bit of a vacation and just enjoying some time. How are you? Good to see you again. I was at the beach and I didn't think about you once.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't. I wasn't at the beach, and I also didn't think about you. But so yeah, good. We're back. This is our episode. I think it's 6 or 7.
Episode 7.
Yeah, of the Tile Happy Hour. Craig and John, we're glad to be here, and really good to see you, Craig. I can't believe it's the second quarter of 2023. It's just amazing. The year is just flying along. A lot happening in the world, a lot happening in the industry, and we're glad that you're here.
Absolutely, because I mean, this is the Tile Happy Hour, and John, I think you made yourself a drink. What did you make yourself?
Just some Jack Daniels. I really, literally, like,
been a Jack Daniels type of day.
It just need that, so it's good.
Well, good. Well, cheers. I've been driving all day, so I've still got a thing of iced tea. So
all right, awesome.
I mean, it's that special North Carolina iced tea, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
if you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'm not going to clue you in. I got a welcome back from a Facebook user. Thank you. We're glad to be back. And as I was saying, this is your show. We're here to talk about tile and tile things, anything about tile that you want to talk about. And where you're watching out there, drop us a comment. Let us know where you're from, what's going on, where you're watching from. If you're watching recorded, drop it in the comments. Say hello.
Yeah, we really love to see where people are watching from. And a lot of times it doesn't like populate on this podcast, but we see it in the background.
Yeah.
People saying hello, sending a message. But if you have a question, a topic suggestion, if you have an idea for a future guest or a topic, or you yourself are really interesting and want to be on the Tile Happy Hour podcast.
Hey, we're open.
Yeah.
We're not taking applications. We're not hiring, are we?
And we are not, but
not yet.
We are looking forward to today's podcast and looking forward to the future. We have a lot of exciting things, really some cool things coming up.
I mean, we talk about the tile industry gets ready every day. I mean, we're constantly changing, constantly doing stuff, but kind of our Super Bowl happens next week, John, and that's coverings, and that's in Orlando, and that's Orlando, Florida.
Yes, so
I mean, I'm assuming there's another Orlando out there. I don't know. I'm just
if there's two Romes, there's got to be two Orlandos.
Absolutely.
So at the Orange County Convention Center, located on Universal Boulevard in Orlando, is the Coverings show. I think this is the 33rd show, I believe, approximately, of the Coverings show. I have attended every show since I'm 23 years old, so it puts it at around 33-ish years. So not missed one show under any circumstances. Even the day after a surgery, I got on a flight and everyone's like, what are you doing?
You're
and I'm
so
like,
dedicated, John.
I'm going to be there. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to the show, looking forward to seeing Craig live in person. Haven't seen my colleague in a while. A lot of the from our Tile Bar team, we have a really big contingency of people going to be down at the show, checking out new products, talking to factories that we deal with already, getting more information, absorbing, learning about the products that Tile Bar represents, and also seeing about new products and new things that are going to be emerging from the show. And then there's a lot of technical. Aren't there a lot of technical like shows or?
Yeah, I mean, every day the show starts officially on Tuesday, and every day from I think it's like 8 a.m. to just after noon. There are classes where you can expand what you know about tile, what you want to know about tile, and they cover a broad swath of topics. everything from how to choose tile, how to design, and also technical things, why this failed, why that failed. There are over 1,000 exhibitors representing 35 different countries that are going to be there. The best thing that I think, I mean, I'm a little, I guess, biased, but we're going to be there, and we're going to be broadcasting live from the podcast booth on Tuesday afternoon, right across from the Welcome Center at 1:15.
Yeah. You know what? We were really excited to be invited to be part of this event, which is the Coverings podcast booth. We just started our podcast not too long ago, and we
8
were
weeks
thinking,
ago. I can do that math quick.
Yeah, you're pretty good. And we were thinking, wow, so next year maybe we'll get invited to be at the podcast booth. And sure enough, after a few episodes that were heard around the world, it got back to Coverings management, and we were invited to participate. So 1:15, right? Inside
1:15.
I think it's inside the convention hall, but near the registration area, I believe.
Yep.
And if you're in town, come and check it out. And if you're not in town, maybe we could arrange to have this kind of put out on Friday. We're going to record it.
Yep. It's that's one of the things about the podcast booth. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be recorded live, but we're not going to be able to broadcast it live. Just there's some logistical things that couldn't work out, but I have an internet connection in my hotel room, and I'm going to work really hard to have it post live at our normal Friday happy hour time at 4:00. And I'm excited because we have some guests that are going to join us. We're also going to be tooling around the exhibit area and just having conversations. I want to include as much of that as we possibly can, just to bring you the content that you want to see. And maybe if you're not there, you can feel like you're there and make plans on being there next year. Because I mean, John, I know it is. What's it cost to go?
It's $1,000 per person, but with the John and Craig Tile Happy Hour discount, it's free.
Absolutely. So when you
tell them you know us, and you'll get in for free.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's
hey,
exciting.
I have an idea, Craig. Why don't we're going to be talking to a lot of people. Why don't we kind of put a little collage together while we're at the show, talking to people, learning, seeing new things, touching and feeling all the new textures and products. How about not next Friday, but the following Friday, we dedicate that episode of our Tile Happy Hour to a Coverings recap. What do you think of that idea?
I love it. I think that's a great idea. That way we can really get it refined to some things that the audience would want to see. And if you love tile, you should love Coverings. You should know about Coverings. And we want to try to bring it to you the best way we can. And that's exciting.
Hey, do you know that dogs can't get an MRI but CAT scan?
I did not know that, John.
Yeah. So today is the International Day of Laughter. So I don't think that joke cut it. I should have asked you. I don't know if you have a joke, but today is not only Happy Hour Day, but today is the International Day of Laughter, and we'd like to recognize that.
International Day of Laughter. Well, I mean, we are live across the world on the internet, and normally I bring laughter just by how I look, but I do have a joke.
Okay.
John, what did the horse say after it tripped?
Don't know.
I've fallen and I can't giddy up. And our number
so that's
one fan,
that's a better dad joke than one I had, but yeah.
Thanks, Rick, for being there. Rick's going to be our moderator once we get there. He laughed, so that's good. That's good. John, today's show is about setting materials, and it obviously, as a contractor, it's been part of my life for the last 20 plus years, and setting materials are dramatically different from when you went to that first Coverings. I don't even know if they probably had setting materials at that first Coverings.
No, they used to take leeches and put it on your head, and then the blood that spills out, then you use that to glue the tile. That's how long ago it was.
See?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
But it's so funny how long people have been installing tile. Obviously, you see it all around the world, especially in Europe. Cities that are thousands of years old have some sort of tile installation. It may be closer to masonry at that point, but ever since they found cement and lime, they started putting together adhesives. And that was the birthplace of our setting materials that we use today. And what's amazing to me is that setting materials did not change a lot until the early 20th century. They were pretty much the same. Cement or Portland cement, lime, water, and lick it and stick it is what we used to call it. And now things are changing daily, and I'm so excited, not to beat a dead horse that can't giddy up, but coverings next week, you're going to see some other innovations, and it's just going to keep pushing forward.
Well, you know what? If the tile industry, the material part of it if it had not changed much, and it has changed a lot, there would still have been advancements in, cementitious products and all types of adhesives. So right there and then there would be a normal, growth of products for installing, but the industry has pushed the limits with, introducing of glass tile, years ago, where there's no porosity, right? Porcelain tiles, no porosity, where back then ceramics had porosity and used to have to soak tile. So the cement doesn't soak into the tile and become brittle. So there was I think throughout history, I feel like cementitious products like a thin set or the original mud beds, right? Mud jobs, those have changed a lot. But what was interesting is the introduction of like an organic adhesive, like a paste, which kind of came to it kind of peaked, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. Right. And then people started using thin sets again for like wall applications. But what's mud 101? A wet mud versus like a dry mud. What's the difference between the two?
I mean, Mud 101 is not used much anymore with the innovation of cement board and thin sets. But a mud floor and a wet setting of floor, man, you have to be a true craftsman to do that well. And mud, your traditional dry pack mud, they call it dry because it has very little water in it. It's just damp, but it is super strong, and it's just a mixture of Portland cement, sand, and water. It's normally a 5-to-1 ratio or a 4-to-1 ratio, depending on what you're doing. If you want to put mud on a wall, and this is you add a little bit of lime to it to give it some stickiness, and then traditionally you would do a wet set. And the way I was taught to do it is you would take your tile. Most of the times it was stone, and you would have a really fine Portland cement and water mixture on the back of your tile, kind of like back buttering, and it's really wet. Beat that into your wet set mud, and once that dried, it was there forever. And
but do people take a tile and stick it in like wet? Like, I think a novice or somebody doesn't know about it, they may visualize like someone pouring cement like for a sidewalk, like that very wet. Did people ever just take tile and stick it in that? Is that a true wet job?
To my knowledge, not a correct wet job. I'm sure it has been done.
Right.
Whether it's been done successfully and repeated, it is not. It's not a installation method I was taught.
So give us a visual. So if you in our mind, so if you have this dry pack where you could pack it down, you could kind of screed it so nice and flat, but then it's still soft. You can't walk on it at that point, right? As soon as you pack it down.
Correct. Yeah. Normally the normal procedure is you give it a day to dry out. It'll change colors. You'll see it goes from a kind of a deep greenish brown to a kind of chalky gray. And then it's solid, and then you can use your thin sets, which thin sets were invented back in the 50s. think it's the 50s. Check my math. But thinset to install your tile on there. And one of our partners, Latacrete, is actually who, and I think we've talked about this before, who spearheaded inventing thinset, which is really just a mixture of latex and cement mortar together to give you something to bond to the new fangled tiles that were coming out all over the place.
So in a way, it's three separate things: the tile on top, thinset in between, and then the mud pack on the bottom. But when it dries, can you call it one unit?
Yeah, I would call it one. I call that tile system a solid unit, and you know it's solid. You can actually tap on it, and you'll hear how it sounds, and you'll hear when there's mistakes, when there's a hollow place. You can hear it, and that's when you have failures. And proper prep, whether it's a dry pack mud, as you brought up, or cement board, that's used a lot in residential applications. But now the innovations have moved to uncoupling membranes and crack isolation membranes and doing self-leveling systems. These are more common than the dry pack in today's, especially commercial installation, but today's installations.
I'm curious, in the Northeast, which is where I am, and there a tile guy back in the 80s or 90s or whatever, a real professional was not, you weren't considered real professional if you used a cement board, because you didn't learn the dry pack method, right? And also, why would you do it? Because the cement board is at, I don't know, 20, 30 or more per sheet, right? And then you kind of buying it pre-made, then you have to thin set it down, then screw it down, then use thin set on top. Is that the case across the country? Is that, or is that the sign of a novice or sign of somebody who's just learned a general contractor?
It has been the case, and especially in the commercial world, it took a long time before these, in your area, these trades setters that were union, they did it the old world way, the dry pack, and and that even filtered down to when I started in the year 2000. Commercial world, you didn't use any cement board unless it was on the wall. In a residential, it caught on more quickly because, and you're right, less skilled labor was able to install with higher success with this innovation, which was cement board, which I think was invented by USG, if I'm not mistaken. And
was Wonder Board the first one? I mean, I know it as Wonder Board. I don't know as the first one, but I don't know if that's true.
I think Duroc was the first one. I'm not 100% sure, but I know they've innovated over the years. A piece of 3x5 piece of cement board used to weigh a lot, especially get it on a pallet and it was wet.
It was, it was like dense steel. It was insanely heavy.
But now they've added,
styrofoam balls.
Balls in there to make them lighter. And then you had the Fiber Rock, which was another popular.
Is that like Dense Shield? Like Dense Shield?
Not Dense Shield. Dense Shield is a polyvinyl board for walls. I forget the brand name. Hardy Board. Hardy Board was the name that I know of.
Isn't Hardy Board, to me, is like a cement board, but it seems to be like compact. They seem to press it together. Is that how they make it?
It's not cement based. It's fiber based. There may be some cement in there, but it is fiber based. Its selling point, it was a little easier to use. Just because it was lighter. I never really liked it that much, which I never used it that much. And now we move into the 21st century, and everything is the styrofoam boards. Where I have a love of Latacrete, so they have the Hydraband board, but also Schluter has their boards. There's the Weedy system, and these boards are amazing because they're light. Most of the time, they're waterproof, and I literally installed my mom's shower, drinking a beer by myself in about 30 minutes with the Hydraband board, and it hasn't leaked yet. or she hasn't told me if it has, but it just makes it so much easier. Now, once again, it's more expensive. You're paying for that convenience and that
When,
ease.
when you say light, what do you mean?
Oh gosh, one 3x5 sheet and I'm guessing maybe 2 or 3 pounds.
Wow. So cement board in its heyday was probably 30 to 40 pounds. 15 times 3. Yeah. You can figure 3 pounds a square
and it
foot.
wasn't waterproof. I mean, this board's waterproof. It's got a water. Now, obviously you've got to install it correctly and seal it correctly. But when you do, it's a beast. And I've had friends come over and help me with projects, and they're like, I'm never using anything else.
Wow.
I'm like, well, I don't know how to, because I'm not that skilled. So I have to use the higher end materials so that I can be a success.
Yeah, I remember the cement boards that used to wick up, right? Like moisture would come up from the tub, and it would come up. I mean, it wouldn't deteriorate, right? The boards wouldn't deteriorate, but it still didn't have the waterproof. So it was good in one way, but it wasn't as effective in another way. Pretty cool.
And you can I still get those questions today. A lot of times you'll have a customer or a client send in pictures that says, I don't know why my bottom 4 inches of my grout looks a different color. And what that is they've used cement board. I always like to say cement, because that's how we say it in North Carolina. Cement board. I try to sound official. And what has happened is the water has wicked up, and that water is in that grout joint, which has caused it to be a different shade. So it doesn't hurt anything necessarily, because eventually, just as it came in, it should go back out.
Is that considered a fail in a project?
I would, yes, in some instance, because what has happened is instead of setting your board off your tub rail and filling it in with a waterproof sealant at the bottom, you just set it directly on there.
Got it.
Will it fall off? And probably not, but will it hold water? Yes. Can it mold? Yes. But the right way to do it is to have a waterproof sealant below your board so that you don't get that wicking action.
Got it.
But
what's really
mind
blowing is that we talked about cementitious products. We talked about like the Wonder Board and the organic adhesive, but then we're talking about the first time I saw these orange plastic rolls with bumps in them, and that's going to help your floor. I think that was that a Schluter product?
That's Schluter Detra.
Yeah.
And I was a big, I did not like it for the longest time. And I think the reason why I didn't understand it well enough.
Right.
Schluter has a great educational program, and I went to Schluter in Montreal for a class. And when I learned about it, I learned why I didn't like it. And normally it was because of whoever was installing it incorrectly.
Right.
But
upside down.
The uncoupling membrane is an innovation that has come in the last 10 to 15 years. And it has probably cut into the cement board market for the floors, because you can use it, almost replace that cement board. It gives you some crack isolation benefits. In some instances, depending on whose product it is, it can give you some waterproofing. I like it because most of the time, if you get a specialized one, you can put a floor heating system in that, and it's seamless and works really well together for a floor.
Oh, so the heating elements, the coils could go kind of between the bumps. And when you see those, if anyone has like a product fail or some kind of installation question or issue, let us know. We'll definitely love to talk about it. But when you see these uncoupling membranes, it doesn't like exude confidence. Like when you look at this, like, how is this going to work? But I'm sure they know what they're doing, because it just doesn't seem, like cement board has like structure to it. This is just something's really thin plastic with kind of raised elements. But I'm sure someone,
there's some innovation to it. Absolutely. So I, as far as prep materials, I mean, there's been a lot of innovation in prep stuff. And, as we move into talking about thinset, seems like I heard that there was a product highlight that you had talked about that may be relatively new.
Oh, well, so yes. So there's a product highlight that is going to be a sneak peek here. This is not going to go live today on the interweb. Only here on the Tile Happy Hour.
I love it when we have reveals. This
Yeah,
is exciting.
This is a reveal, and the reason it's a reveal is that at the Tile Bar Studios, we're still putting our assets together. So there's a lot going into this product line. It's not ready to be launched, but today I was able to film the product happy hour. So this will be probably a month out, I think. But we can show it here. Just don't tell anybody. Okay. And don't ask me for samples yet, please.
We can show it here. So let's take a look.
Hey, it's John Tedesco. Guess what? It's Friday and it's happy hour all day today at Tile Bar. We're in the studio and this is a revolutionary LVT luxury vinyl product by Stacy Garcia. Comes in 3 formats: a 6x48 plank, a 12x24 parquet, and a 12x48 chevron. This is amazing. So instead of asking your installer to cut a chevron, it's already done in a plank. You see it comes in 6 colors, super nice, really hot colors, spot on. And look at the end result. You cannot tell this was not individual strips of chevron. Really, really nice. And then here is the parquet 12x24. Put these together, same thing. A really cool display with minimal layers. Solid core click, acoustical backing. This is John Tedesco. I'd like to wish you a happy hour. What do you think of that?
That's pretty sweet. I think LVT is going to take over the wood world.
You know what? Yeah, it has its place in the market. And I know we're talking about setting materials, and what's quite interesting is that doesn't take any setting materials because it's a solid core luxury vinyl tile. It has a tongue and groove element to the edges, and you kind of click it together. So you really don't need any adhesive on that. So that's pretty cool. But where it is also interesting is the configuration. Some people are taking a porcelain tile and want the installer to put it on a chevron, insane amount of cuts and labor. Mm-hmm. LVT, even trickier, especially with a click, because the click system has to work and you're cutting the tiles and there's no click where you're cutting. And so almost an impossibility, but some designers have been specifying that chevron. So with our creative team at Tile Bar, with Stacy Garcia and with our factories, we're able to create a luxury vinyl that's 12 inches by 48 inches. It has like the chevron pattern in it, and then you click them together. It continues the pattern, and then when you step away and you look at it, you just see chevron, which is beautiful. And then there's the 12 by 24 parquet, which has like 5. The visual is kind of like 4 rectangles in one direction and one a piece on top, but it's really just one 12 by 24, but it looks like 4 by whatever 10 strips. And you literally maybe 4 by 20 strips, and you put them together, kind of alternate them, and you have this parquet looking floor, and then a corresponding plank to go with it. So again, not live. I figured I would give everyone a sneak peek at the
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think just to tie it in, what is really cool about LVT is what we just talked about, the uncoupling membrane and the heating system. You can use that in conjunction with LVT.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Unless, and most LVTs I know are 100% okay with this. If you're buying manufactured, always double check. But
right.
The process is you put down your heating mat or uncoupling membrane, your heating wire. You do a self-leveling to cover the wire. And then you almost set your LVT like it's on a concrete floor.
Okay,
and
so when you're taking an LVT, you're putting it on a nice, flat, smooth surface. It could very well be a surface that was floated very thinly or self-leveling or whatever. Mm-hmm. And underneath that could be a heating element so that you kind of like heating up that layer of cement, and then that's radiating through the product eventually.
Yep, transfers to the feet, and then you always have a warm floor underfoot. You don't have to wear socks anymore.
Do you know, is that the case with a solid core click and a glue down? I'm wondering if the glue factor is a thing.
Shouldn't, because normally that heat only gets to like 70 degrees, 75
okay.
degrees. So it's not that hot to where it re-emulsifies the glue. It's a great addition. I'm trying to figure out how I can get it in the studio here.
Got it.
So then I don't have to wear socks with my shorts that I'm wearing now. But so as you move on through the system, thin sets are part of the innovation that we've seen over the last few years. I'm not sure how much more they can innovate. I mean, they're stronger than they ever have been before. They're lighter than they ever have been before. They're more flexible than they ever have been before. So it'll be interesting to see what's next for them. But if back in the day, it was a 50-pound bag of thin set, and it was mostly cement and with a little bit of goodness in it to give it a chemical bond, and that was latex. But now we sell, or it's out there that there's these lightweight mortars that have that will cover the same amount as a 50-pound bag. So, for instance, there's a 25-pound bag of mortar that yields the same square footage as a 50-pound bag.
Yeah, I don't believe you.
Just because of all the fancy technology that's in there.
I don't know. I'm thinking about, you go to the supermarket, you see paper towels. It says these 5 rolls equal 38 rolls. I don't get the math, where they get that math from.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure on those rolls, but on the for the thin set, it is because it's less dense. I mean, that a pound of feathers weighs the same as a pound of pennies.
All right. Yeah, that's profound. I don't know where that gets us, but yeah,
exactly.
I appreciate that analogy. I think.
Yeah.
So I know thin sets as the thicker you get, the more weak it is. I don't know if that's proper English. The weaker it is. In the original sense of a thin set, like, and then there's medium bed and thick bed mortars. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. And the reason that these we figure this stuff out is because stuff fails. But thin sets were made to be thin. I mean, imagine that. That's what they're named. And what happens is there is, or has been in the past, significant shrinkage when it hydrates. And that just means it's curing. And when you build it up too much, it can't handle the shrinkage, and it cracks. But as tiles have gotten larger, you've needed more thin set. And so they've innovated the technology to where certain thin sets, a large and heavy tile thin set, that's the trigger word, can be built up thicker to where they can handle the shrinkage, and they don't shrink that much. So
you said large and heavy. Is that the new vernacular instead of medium beds or thick beds?
Yes. That is, there's no such thing as, well, people will always call it that, but thick bed, medium bed is not the proper term anymore. It's large and heavy tile. And
it's politically correct now to say it that way. Got it.
That's right. And I'm sure
it identifies as that. Exactly.
Exactly.
Now, you said something really interesting before. And I know it's shocking to everybody.
That is shocking.
You said the word fail, and that made me think that what day is today? And I'm thinking today's Friday, and I'm thinking there's usually a Friday fail. Did you happen to stumble across a fail this week?
Even on vacation.
Wow.
I was able to, and I'll be honest, I pulled this one out of the bank. This one's been out there for a minute, but let's do a refresh.
Yes.
If the blue tape is noting the tile that has stayed on the floor, you probably have a Friday fail. I'm sorry, John. I cut you off right before you were going to say something. No,
I was saying to the people that are new to our podcast that Craig does every Friday, a Friday fail, and these fails at the tile industry just find him when he's, at the rest stop or at the restaurant or heading out to the mall, and the half-inch grout joint next to the 1/8 grout joint next to the the tile that's the light that's put against the wall in a bathroom that cascades down to a tile that has a lot of lippage and screams out at you. He finds those, videotapes it. He's probably been kicked out of a few restrooms taking these pictures, but he does it for the good of the community. We appreciate, we really do. So tell us about that blue tape. What's the deal?
That was an actual client photo, and if you ever send me anything, I'll keep you anonymous because I don't want to embarrass anybody. I want us to all learn together. But this installer had not installed before, and I think they were using probably a trowel that was meant to install LVT. It was very small.
1/16 of an inch V-notch.
Like a 1/16 of an inch V-notch. And the only place the tile stuck was in certain places where maybe the floor was high. And
I thought you were going to say the only place it stuck was on the trowel.
Yeah. And they were wondering what was wrong with the tile. And but you could clearly see when you zoomed in, and I had a couple of different pictures I was able to zoom in, there was no mortar hardly anywhere.
Wow.
It was just one of those things. They didn't do their research ahead of time. They weren't exactly sure what they were doing. I do give them kudos for finishing the room. I mean, they did the entire room, and then the next day figured out that everything just started coming.
You know what? They almost had enough blue tape on there to keep the floor down. They could have just put that in the grout joints and used that to bond it together.
I'm not sure why they just didn't take it all up and start over, but they didn't. And I wish I had a place where they could send us, after your help, here's what happened. Because I would love to see how many of them persevered through, changed the material, maybe changed the project, maybe just put carpet in. I don't know. I would love to know the rest of the story, as they used to say.
Have you heard the term shoemaker?
Like the race car driver?
No, the term. Oh, so in the Northeast, I think it's an Italian heritage thing. If someone contractor goes to a house and sees a job like that, he says it must have been done by a shoemaker. Not to degrade shoemakers, but shoemakers know how to fix shoes, but they don't know how to do anything else, probably.
Okay.
So again, I don't think it was derogatory to, or maybe shoemakers wasn't like the most elevated position in the craft world, but I think in the New York region, or at least in the Italian kind of circles, everyone with Italian heritage said, "Oh, it must have been a shoemaker who did that." And
I'll have to remember that. I could probably use that on a few different videos. Hey, must have been a shoemaker.
Just make sure you're not talking to a shoemaker if there's any left out there.
That's true. That's true. Go ahead. What were you saying?
So the thin sets that we have, the large format tile,
large and heavy format, yeah.
And so I guess there's latex or whatever. What's inside it to make it more flexible? Because my understanding, a regular thin set or old thin set should be like, I don't know, 7% flexibility, and like a fortified is like 20%. Are those still the numbers that are out there?
I'm not sure of those numbers. I think you made them up, but
but nobody else knew that, so you could have went along with it.
That's true. I'm sorry. I apologize. They're different types, and when you go to ANSI, which is the American National Standards Institute, they'll tell you how much latex and the bond strength you need to fit in a certain. As you said, the beginning was kind of very little latex. Then we added a little bit more. So that was a different ANSI standard. Then they added some flexibility, and that was this standard. And then they added, so they keep adding. I think 118.4 is kind of your basic polymer modified thin set. And there's a minimum, and normally it's based on the shear breaking strength of the material. And that is strengthened mainly by adding latex, but as you add latex, they've also added other stuff. I'm sure there's a Kentucky Fried recipe hidden somewhere with how much. I mean, there's one that says they have Kevlar in it. And I'm like, what do you need Kevlar for? And now they've started adding fiberglass fibers to some of it, which
Oh, wow.
gives it extra strength, but still allows it to be flexible. And there's one thin set that I was actually testing for tile bar to ship samples with, that's made from tires, and it is uber sticky.
Wow.
And uber flexible. And the innovation is, I won't say endless because it's never ending. And you don't need those things for every situation. And that's the whole key.
We're going to quote you on that. It's not, we won't say it's endless, but it's never ending.
Yeah. You could write that one down in Craig's book of circular comments.
Can I use that? I don't know if I want to, but thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Your money is never ending when you spend it with John Tedesco. Something like that. Yeah. But the key is when you have a project, you need to find the material that's right for your project. And you don't necessarily need to buy $100 bag of thinset, because you may be just installing a backsplash, and a $20 bag of thinset will work. But also, you don't want to go the opposite way, and you need a $100 bag of thinset because your situation is highly risky.
Well, you know what? We can't have a conversation about materials without talking about what has historically been known as the weak link in the tile industry, and that is called grout.
Oh gosh!
Right, and it's made, like, literally, if you wanted to be rich in this industry, just go to bed go to bed and sleep and think about ways of making grout better, the grout experience better, the performance, the longevity, and it's come a long way. It's amazing.
Well, I have invented the perfect grout, and nobody's picked it up yet. So I'm going to broadcast it here, and if it makes it outside of the tile happy hour world, I'll know you stole it from me.
All right.
But it's called Mop Water Gray grout.
Water Gray.
Yeah, Mop Water Gray. It never stains. It never fades. It's always Mop Water Gray.
It's always muddy looking.
It's always muddy looking. But I've been knee deep in grout literally for a long time. But I'm also working on a project right now that's heavily related to grout and kind of teaching some basics of grout. So I've been doing a lot of studying lately. We're going to have some videos coming out soon that's hopefully to open some eyes of what you need when you need it. But grout has always been an issue. And the sad thing is you still need it no matter what. It is always recommended to have grout. And there are a few caveats like stack stones and some other things that are kind of unique. But most all tiles, ceramic, porcelain, stone, need to have grout. That gives it a couple of different things. It gives it the stabilization between the two tiles so they don't rub against each other. It also helps in a little bit of flexibility. And then, it also can be an aesthetic thing. If you want to get bold and choose a contrasting color grout.
Well, perfect example would be a subway tile, white 3x6 with white grout, which is what you think of when you buy subway tile, or it could be black grout, right? And navy blue or gray grout. And that is a whole. Have you ever seen those examples of like penny rounds grouted with black and then grouted with white? It gives a complete different look. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, it really is. Yeah, grout changes the installation. It changes what it looks like to you. And I am a big proponent of match your grout to your tile. And that's because I don't want callbacks. And I know if the grout matches the tile, odds are it's going to look great.
Right.
But I also know that designers love to have a pop of color or this. That's not me, but you just need to know what you're getting into when you do that. And when you're doing that, you need to, first of all, know what you're doing and take all the precautions to have your grout joints even and your spacing even. And sometimes that can't be achieved with, for instance, a handmade or a hand look tile, and it's going to look horrible.
Right. Well, I think I know there's a lot going on in the grout world, in the mixing or pre-mixed, not pre-mixed, flexibility, porosity,
Yep.
colors. But I personally appreciate the one innovation more than anything else. It's the fact that you no longer, with certain grouts, need to say you need wall grout or floor grout, sanded or unsanded. That
Yep.
to me is the biggest innovation. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that is a great innovation, and that came along as they're strengthening grout. Obviously, the grout manufacturers have been working really hard to make stain-resistant grout because they know that all of their complaints come from grout, and that innovation carried into some other different areas, which made the grout stronger, and also changed the aggregate of the grout, which made it sanded and non-sanded to a different aggregate. Now, not all of them are the same, but it made for your, and the trigger word here is high performance cement grout. That is a different ANSI standard altogether, and that's based on the same things that we talked about with thinsets, based on strength and all that other stuff.
So,
but it shrunk the aggregate down.
Right, but usually when you shrink the aggregate, okay, that makes sense for 1/16 of an inch grout lines or 1/8 of an inch grout lines, but usually did not make sense for bigger than 1/8 of an inch up to a quarter or a half inch, because that aggregate would crumble or wouldn't hold up if it was.
That's when
fine.
The special Kentucky Fried Recipe comes in.
Okay.
So it's got all sorts of Kevlar, fiber, latex, and stuff in there to boost up the chemical bond of it that allows it to be in those really large grout joints. I mean, some of them go up to 3/4 of an inch.
That's amazing,
and that's crazy, and stay color consistent and not crack when installed correctly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the number one thing. You take a regular grout or an old standard grout and you put in a big grout joint. I mean, the number one thing that's going to happen is just going to crack, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, you see it in every Exxon bathroom. I mean, it's cracked.
Yeah, I know when you're on route whatever and wherever you live, you stop, honey, we got to stop at the bathroom. And go, I need some Friday fails.
This one before. Let's stop here. This one looks, this could be a doozy.
Yeah.
Let me get the big camera out for this one. But yeah, I mean, grouts, I will say, just being in the commercial industry, when high performance grouts came out, and the first ones we dealt with were Permacolor's first iteration and Mapei's Ultra Color, and there were some other Prism grout that came out. Our grout complaints were literally cut by 75%.
Wow. And Permacolor is the Laticrete.
Permacolor is the Laticrete, and now they've even got Permacolor Select, which is a step up from that. And
I'm looking forward to coverings, because I know out of every part of that show, there's a lot of all new things, but the setting material companies, I mean, literally, if you're just making thin setting grout for the most part and some other things, like there's a fight and there's a battle to come up with the coolest next thing. And I love to see what's happening at this setting material companies, because that's really going to be cool. And speaking of coverings, so here we are, it's Friday, right? Covering starts on Tuesday, and we have a big announcement, don't we?
We do. As we said earlier, the Tile Bar Happy Hour, I had that up for, is going to be recording our podcast live, and we have some guests. And John, tell us who the guests are going to be with us. On Tuesday.
So at 1:15 on Tuesday, Kristen Coleman, who's a senior vice president of Novita, also known as Novita Communications, is an iconic public relations marketing firm in the industry for about 25 or more years. Christina Botti heads that group, and Kristen is a senior vice president. She's going to be on our podcast. We're going to be talking about trends in the industry. Novita has represented many parts of the industry, including very heavily the Italian trade commission in the past, and also Italian factories. They also have an Italian office. So she's going to be on there. And then Filippo Manuzzi, who is the CEO of Sant'Agostino, which is just one of the most well-known tile brands. Been around since day one, this company.
Can I practice my Italian with him?
Yes. Yeah, but just don't embarrass me. And
well, I can't promise that. Okay.
Yeah. So so he's going to be our guest as well. So the two of them, we're going to talk about trends. We're going to talk about the tile industry. We're going to talk about innovation, perhaps some green initiatives, and all the above. So if you are in Orlando next week, Tuesday, 1:15 p.m., come check out. You'll see the John and Craig will have our coasters. If you're interested in some happy hour coasters, you're welcome. And what we'll do is, if you're not in town, then Friday we'll put a compilation together and we will broadcast that podcast on Friday at our regular happy hour time, 4 p.m. on Friday. And then what we'll do is the following Friday, so I guess 2 Fridays from now, will be a recap of coverings, and we'll have some clips and maybe some conversations and maybe some really exciting things. What do you think, Craig?
Yeah, that'll be Friday the 28th.
Wow.
Friday the 28th. So that's almost to the end of April.
I can't believe it.
I know. So yeah, I think that's going to be amazing. I think these coasters are cool. You got to, hey, I don't care about these two guys, so you can just flip it over. I mean, we'd like for you to have, especially my face here. But if you don't, just flip it over. It's the
just
happy
flip
hour.
It over.
Everybody loves the happy hour. We're not promoting drinking. We're just promoting a good time. We want you to be happy. We want you to enjoy your industry. If you don't enjoy your industry, you're working. See, John and I, we don't want to ever work because we have a good time doing what we're doing.
We really love it.
We love the people in our industry, and so excited to see old friends make some new friends at coverings next week. I hope we can all trade Instagram handles. I don't know. I'm not good with the social media stuff, but and just have fun.
Yeah, it's been fun talking about. If you're not a tile geek or a tile nerd, this was an absolutely boring podcast. But if you're in the industry, I loved it. It's really cool to learn about some new things. We're glad to bring it to you. Any questions, comments, post it on our social sites. We have our social sites listed somewhere, as you can check it out. And if you want to join us Tuesday live, if you want to see us next week, there we go. Great work there, Craig. And it's been fun. So everyone, this is John Tedisco, and I'd like to wish you peace, health, and happiness.
Yeah. And as always, I hope to, what I say, I'm not kudos, I second what John said. Okay. I hope to see you next week. I had a good time talking about setting materials. I love that stuff. I could talk for 4 hours about it, but as John said, it's not very boring. But I'm always trying to learn more, learn together, and tile the world.